one of Austin's biggest problems last year is, and most of the time in MLS, to be quite frank, is they never had a plan B. And plan A didn't always work. Oftentimes it honestly didn't. And Brandon Vazquez offers you a plan B.
We're going to start off with this union news because we saw lots of names floating around with who was going to be the next head coach. The guy who seemed to be leading eventually took a job elsewhere, and then we really started seeing Bradley Carnell's name thrown into the mix. So why did the Philadelphia Union settle on him? Because, of course, coming off a coach that they had had for a decade, they're going to put a lot of serious consideration into who's their next boss.
Of course. So in moving on from Jim Curtin, this club wanted, to go back to their high pressing transition roots. Jim Curtin took over before Ernst Tanner took over as sporting director. Jim Curtin had the team playing a possession-based style. Jim Curtin wanted to change with the new regime, and he did, and they were very successful. Over the last, year and a half, they'd gotten away a little bit from their high-pressing transition ethos, particularly in 2024 when Jim Curtin decided, we need to really change things up or the season's not going to get any better. So there was a discord between the sporting director and the head coach. I say all this to say is, the whole reason that they moved on from Jim Curtin was to double down on high pressing and transition, to double down on youth development and development of both academy players and players that are coming in from outside the club. That's what they want with Bradley Carnell, and that's what they're going to get. They're going to be a team that's top 5 in all of the pressing metrics, passes per defensive action, high intensity sprints, long ball share, stuff like that. All of the stylistic stats will show you that this is going to be a high pressing team once again, and that's where this search was always going to be. Thomas Lech was the first name that kind of came across me that I thought was the front runner. He was. And then the Red Bull Salzburg job opened up and he took that. So Bradley Carnell has been a very strong candidate all along the way. He was a finalist when they were talking to multiple candidates, interviewing multiple candidates. And this manager will bring back exactly what Ernst Tanner in the front office wants with this club.
A guy who took you to a couple finals to a guy who couldn't get out of the first round of the playoffs seems like a step backwards, but again, I don't make those decisions. They do. Jim Curtin was linked with a job to New York City FC, but it looks like they're going in the direction of Pascal Jensen, a guy maybe not a lot of our viewers are familiar with. I know he was an assistant for Arne Slot. He's had some success with AZ Alkmaar and Ferencváros. What could you tell us about him, and why is he being linked so heavily right now with New York City FC?
That one was a little bit of a surprise just because he doesn't have any obvious City Football Group ties. And I don't say that derisively. I just say that in all of their previous hires since their first manager, Jason Kreis, have had strong ties to City Football Group. This is a manager who is kind of highly rated in Europe with Ferencváros and particularly what he did in the Netherlands. Obviously, he got fired by AZ Alkmaar by the end, but most managers end up getting fired these days. So that's just how it goes. He's going to be somebody who can get the most out of their high-priced young talent. That was where Nick Cushing really slipped. There were so many high-priced, high-talented young attackers that didn't really develop under him. You look at Talis Magno, you look at Julian Fernandez, you look at Augustin Ojeda. These players either were marginalized or he wasn't getting the best out of them. The style wasn't also super aesthetic. This is City Football Group. It's the club of Manchester City. They want to play a little bit more pretty, but this club in particular, New York City FC, they're going to use it to bring in a lot of high talent, high-priced young players, particularly from South America. And that has to be a priority for the coaching search, and it was. And Pascal Jensen, they believe, will get the most out of their young players that are currently on the squad and the young players that they will continue to buy, because the strategy is not changing with this club. They want to be successful, but they want to bring in young players and develop them. They want to spend a lot of money and move these players on to Europe like Tati Castellanos did. So that's what Pascal Jensen will come in hoping to do, and they believe he will.
Now let's stick with NYCFC because they have a player that they just sent out on loan, James Sands to St. Pauli. I'm sorry. Get out of here so we can talk NYCFC without being interrupted. This move, he's going to be there for the rest of the season, and if certain measurements are met, they could extend the loan. Why is this beneficial to both club and player? Don't listen to, not beneficial to fans, but to club and player.
Tell him to come back.
It's beneficial to the player because this had been the plan for a long time that, hey, Sands, you're going to play here, you're going to develop here, and then you're going to go to Europe. Well, he already did that with Rangers. And when he ended up coming back to New York City FC, he had options from other clubs, including Standard Liège, where at the time, Ronnie Deila, his former NYCFC manager, now the Atlanta United manager, they were one of the clubs chasing him. NYCFC convinced him to come back, and they gave him a new contract. They said, you'll play defensive midfield, right? So when that happened, I assumed Sands would be here for a few years. And at the very least, if he leaves, it won't be a loan. It'll be a permanent transfer. So this is the club doing James Sands right. Like, for me, the obvious side of this is James Sands wanted to go back to Europe. He's going to a Bundesliga club. That is very good. But this deal for NYCFC, it's a loan, and then the certain conditions, that's not a purchase option. That's to extend the loan. So for me, I'm surprised because this doesn't obviously benefit the team. This is a player who is an absolute key starter, a very good defensive midfielder in Major League Soccer. And yes, they want to help move him on, but they're not getting a big transfer fee for this. So this struck me as a surprise, and it's the club doing right by the player, which, again, a lot of these moves can be mutually beneficial, and maybe down the line it will be as well. But for me, like, NYCFC are doing him a solid. They could have said, it doesn't make any sense for us to loan you again. If they want to buy you, they can buy you. And they didn't do that. They didn't stand in his way.
Now let's talk about another young guy. And by the way, James Sands, I hope you have a great career in Europe, but, you know, I'll miss you every day. Let's talk about Esmir Baraktarovic from New England going over to PSV. Obviously, Ernie Stewart. There's a list of other Americans there, folks that are somehow linked to America. Esmir Baraktarovic, 19 years old, going over there from MLS. What should we expect from this guy?
This is an excellent player. What I really love about him is his technical ability and the audacity he has to be a dribbling winger, to be a 1v1 winger. You have to have this irrational level of confidence. So he's a Bosnia and Herzegovina international, but he had represented the United States at the youth level. And then in a January camp, he made a senior camp, a friendly. It didn't cat tie him. I believe his first or second touch, he made somebody. Not only tried to make somebody, he made somebody. That's all you need to know about this player. He wants to embarrass you on the field. He has went from somebody who's like really technically gifted, and it's like, all right, will he be able to impact the game physically, or will he be able to turn that technique and those fun moments that look good as Twitter highlights into actual goal contributions? Well, over the last year to 18 months, he really has. And that has very much impressed me, that he went from a really talented young player to, okay, this is a real top professional player. This is somebody who's going to make a difference at some really strong levels. So he's going to PSV right now. He's appeared in every single one of Bosnia and Herzegovina's last 6 or 7 internationals. Since the day he was eligible for that nation, he's appeared in every game. This is a 19-year-old kid playing in Major League Soccer. He comes on his debut, he assists Edin Dzeko. Like, this is a really big talent. PSV saw that. They're paying around $2.5 million up front. The deal could go up to like $6.5 million with a sell-on clause as well attached. That this is really good business for the New England Revolution. He probably won't immediately get into the PSV team because of his age. He'll probably get his first minutes with their second team, but PSV are a club that brings through young players all the time. If he plays well in the second team, he will very quickly get to the first team. This is obviously a player that they strongly believe will be in the first team pretty quickly because of the fee and everything else, and how much that they love him at this club and like him at this club to get this deal done. So I'm expecting big things, but just trying to be careful that, you know, if he's not starting for PSV's first team in 2 weeks, to not sound any alarm bells.
Tom, I'm going to sneak in one last question here. Brandon Vazquez, we've been hearing reports of him going back to MLS from Monterrey and having previously been at FC Cincinnati, something that you reported on. So, of course, I've got to ask you, while we've got you here, you know, is there a lot of truth behind these reports? And would Austin be a good fit for Brandon Vazquez?
Yeah, there has been a lot of nonsense out there on the Brandon Vazquez saga that's driven me a little bit crazy. So last night I reported Austin FC are nearing a deal to sign Brandon Vazquez. That is very, very close. I'm expecting this to get done, but hey, nothing's done until it's done. I believe this would be an awesome fit because he's an MLS-proven striker who's going to score goals. He'd be an awesome fit at a lot of clubs. The way that Austin FC want to play under Nico Estevez is going to be similar to what they did under Josh Wolf, and that's create chances through possession. And I think Brandon Vazquez has a lot to his game. He's really smart with his movement. That's one of my favorite things about him. And I think he'll fit really well in this team. And then one of Austin's biggest problems last year is, and most of the time in MLS, to be quite frank, is they never had a plan B. And plan A didn't always work. Oftentimes it honestly didn't. And Brandon Vazquez offers you a plan B. He's awesome aerially. You can kind of lump it forward to him, or he becomes dangerous when things bog down and you need to cross the ball. They also got a plan B in their club record signing last summer, Usman Bukhari. He's really good technically, but guess what? He's one of the fastest players in the league. So they can play direct now with Usman Bukhari, and Brandon Vazquez would be an excellent addition if they get this over the line. And the latest I was told last night is, you know, we're pretty close to the paperwork stage. They're going back and forth over the final details. So things are very, very close right now.